Thank you, Huey, and thanks to APCUG for letting me speak again. I think this is the second time I've done this, and I've enjoyed it quite a bit. So a little background on me. Technically, my job, I'm a system administrator at St. Jude Medical in Sylmar, California. We build predominantly pacemakers, and there's a lot of servers associated with not only the construction of those, but the management after they go out in the field. They do, in fact, report back how well they're doing and how the patient is doing, and I think we track 160,000 pacemakers. And to run all of St. Jude Medical, I think we're tracking 1,500 Unix and Linux servers worldwide. So it's very educational. It's a lot of fun, too. My avocation, I've been involved with the Southern California Linux Expo since its inception in the early 2000s. We just completed Scale 11 this last February, and we had 2,300 attendees. I was the publicity chair for quite a few years, and I've transitioned to training chair over the last couple years now. You may not run Linux on your desktop, or if you do, great, but pretty much everything you come in contact with out on the internet runs Linux, and increasingly everything around you runs Linux, and we'll talk about that some more. Why is it so popular? For one thing, it's highly modular, and that makes it highly configurable. You can add components or subsystems as you need. For instance, Linux running on a thermostat doesn't need a graphical user interface, and you can just take it out. Additionally, the design makes it very, very stable, very crash-proof. It's very rare for a Linux system these days to go down because of something misbehaving. You can have an application go away once in a while, but it will not take the operating system down. They call them uptimes, and uptimes of a year are unremarkable. It's not a big deal. You could put Linux on your computer at home, and as long as the power didn't fail or a hard drive didn't die, you could come back in a year and log in again, and you'd be just fine. It's also secure. Linux was designed with the Unix security model in hand, and that makes it very, very hard for a person to gain enough privileges to do bad things to the server or the operating system. Only the root, the administrator account, which is called root, has access to everything. You, as a regular user, have access to all the programs and your data, and that's it. What makes it increasingly popular for manufacturers is there's no licensing costs. They can download Linux for phones, for whatever, configure it to their needs, and put out a copy with each one of their products with no additional license fees. Additionally, Linux, there's now a automotive group that's looking at Linux for cars. So we'll see where that goes. And all of that software is available to everyone for free with a download, including you. So where can you run Linux? Of course you can run it on the desktop. Not many people run Linux on the desktop. It's not because it isn't suitable or because it's hard. It's not. Right behind me, where I'm sitting in our office, are the Linux workstations for me and my wife, and right in front of me is the Linux workstation for my grandkids, my 10-year-old and my 12-year-old. The reason it doesn't penetrate the market much is there aren't very many vendors who sell it pre-installed. And a lot of people who just use computers just want to use what they have. But it's rugged, reliable, and it's easy to use. It's got a mousy, clicky interface like you can see. Same deal for the desktop, or the laptop. Same user interfaces, same stuff. A nice thing about Linux is it's not resource intensive. You can run it on pretty much any computer that isn't older than a few years. I just retired a 9-year-old laptop that was running quite nicely. Wasn't broken, just decided to go to a newer one. You can also run Linux on a computer in your home and run it as a server and run all of those applications you see there. And they're all menu installation, and the hardware requirements, unless you're streaming 4 streams of media over a gigabit Ethernet in your house, then the hardware requirements are pretty minimal. Except for disk storage. If you're going to store movies, then that's another story. But there's a whole classification of electronic widgets that you don't typically sit in front of that can run Linux in the home. And they can be very, very useful for a number of reasons, and we'll talk about those. And one of them is the dedicated firewall. And that is a computer that runs firewall software. And we'll talk about why you'd want to do it. This is a screenshot of ClearOS. This is the one I use. And all of these softwares I show you can be accessed via a dedicated web interface. That's how they're configured. There's no command line involved once you're done installing them. So they're very easy to use. This one here shows our daily graph of inbound traffic, which is green, and outbound is blue. This is a 6 meg DSL link, and you can see that other than this is 24 hours. Last night we got pretty busy, and then nothing overnight. Something at 8 o'clock in this morning. Oh yeah, this spike at 8 a.m. would be my wife checking her Facebook, and then get busy again in the evening. So very, very handy, very, very useful. Now let's look at the very specialized software that this firewall runs on. You can see the picture there. That is an IBM Think Center. About 3 years ago, I was taking some old computers to the local e-waste repository, which is at the local junkyard or trash disposal site, and they have an open front dumpster there. And I saw this Think Center sitting there, so I grabbed it and brought it home. Opened it up, and other than somebody taking a hammer to the hard drive, very wisely, it was completely intact. An older Pentium, I think this is an early Pentium 4 model, has 500 megs of RAM, and I put a 36 gig disk in it just because that's what I had, and it fired up fine. To use it as a firewall, you need a goes in and a goes out and 2 network interface cards, so I added a second one, and it saw it just fine. 500 megs of RAM, I checked it last night when I was preparing this presentation. It's using 200. And of the 36 gig disk I put in, it's using 1.6 gig. This thing has been running 24/7 on a junker machine in my workshop on a UPS since I built it 3 years ago. But why would you want to do something that when you can buy a little router? So here's the deal. If you're running fiber to your house or a very high capacity cable modem, chances are that that 1 or 2 year old desktop wireless access point you're using as a router is a bottleneck. These machines, even the old ones with 2 NICs on a PCI bus, have substantially higher throughput than a router. So if you have 2 or 3 people streaming videos over the internet into your house using most of your inbound bandwidth, that's very, very challenging for a low-end piece of equipment like a little desktop wireless access point. That's why you'd want to use a dedicated router like this or as a firewall. But you don't just have to run ClearOS like I showed. There are lots of different softwares out there, open source softwares that are available for you to try. This one's called Smoothwall. It's quite highly regarded. This one is called Monowall. In spite of having zeros instead of O's, it's called Monowall. And this is the one that Smoothwall forked off of. This was the granddaddy. As you can see, it's got a web GUI configurator. And all of these machines are highly configurable, all of these softwares. This is the one that if I were going to dump ClearOS, I would go with pfSense. Very highly regarded, very featureful, very easy to use. And a little confession here, if you'll notice down in the lower right-hand corner, it is not running on Linux. It's running on FreeBSD. But it's a dedicated installer. It runs you through the menu, so who cares what the underlying OS is as long as it's stable and secure. Now, if you do have a wireless access point from Linksys or Netgear or something, there are open source applications for those, though. They replace the existing software with more featureful, more reliable, and higher throughput applications. And they're not hard to install. If you've ever done a firmware update of a wireless access point, you just go into the web page and it picks the place where you upload the software. It's the same thing here. You just upload the different software and reset it. This is what I use here. It's called DD-WRT. I have no idea what it's for, or what it stands for, but you can see from the tabs there that it's very, very featureful. All sorts of good stuff in there. One of the things you can do with some of these is set up a separate visitor LAN, set up a different wireless LAN called guest, and your guests can use it and they can go out to the internet, but they can't get anything else on your home LAN. Very handy, especially if you have teenagers. Here's another one for your wireless access point. This is OpenWRT. One of these forked off or branched off from the other, but I don't know which one came first. OpenWRT is a little more actively developed. It's highly regarded also. There's another one on here called Tomato, which I did not put on here, which is dedicated to Netgear. I have a reference for that at the end. But wait, there's more. If you have need for a large amount of file storage, you could buy a little dedicated NAS from Netgear or Buffalo, something like that. But if you want to roll your own, buy a couple disk drives and put them in an old desktop computer and stick them in a closet someplace and put them on the network. Then you install something called FreeNAS, Network Attached Storage. And the nice thing about these, they speak Windows protocol, a Windows share. You could do NFS mounts from Linux and Apple share, and more features that we can even talk about. We could have a whole session on FreeNAS features, I think. Some of them are quite esoteric, but they're in the background, and it's quite easy to install. Again, all of these are all menu-based installs. Don't take much RAM and don't take much horsepower. But wait, there's more. You may not know it, but if you're running an Android phone, there is replacement software. The good things about these replacement softwares is that there's no crapware on them. None of those applications you can't remove. They generally run the latest kernel, and they tend to be a lot more efficient and quicker, and you can run them on older phones where you might not be able to get good performance out of an older phone. These are quite efficient replacement softwares. CyanogenMod is the most popular, but there are many other custom ROMs available. If you do a Google search for Android custom ROM, there's a million of them. Now the downer is not all Android cell phones are supported because some of the vendors have elected to lock the bootloader. They're user unfriendly, as it were. If you go to a site like CyanogenMod, it will list very clearly which vendors and which models will support the latest CyanogenMod. And these developers are very highly regarded. The guy who started CyanogenMod, after he ran the site for a couple of years, Google made him a job offer and said, come on over here and work on Android. So, this is good stuff. I can't emphasize too much how good this software is. But wait, there's more. If you like storing and streaming home media, there are media centers available for older PCs. Put a video card in them and a network card and a large disk drive and install one of these softwares, and they will even, if you have an infrared card in them, they'll respond to your TV remote control. You can stream music, etc. A lot of fun to do. Originally, it was generated for Xbox. That's why it was called Xbox MC, XBMC, Xbox Media Center. But since then, it's been spun off to regular PCs. This was the oldest and first, and it's quite good. But you also have MythBuntu. MythTV was a follow-on to XBMC with different features. You can see Watch TV, a media library, manage your recordings, an information center. It will manage optical discs, DVD-ROMs, and CD-ROMs. This particular version of MythTV is built on top of Ubuntu Linux, so it's called MythBuntu. I run Fedora Linux, and the Myth version of that is Mythdora. But wait, there's more. Here's another media center software called Geeksbox. I found it out there, and it seems to be very actively supported. You can see in the printout there, the screenshot, videos, live TV. Now, if you've got a TV tuner in it, you can record onto this, or you can relay it onto a TV or a LED screen, like a PC. Also, it's got other add-ons. I didn't get a list of those, and also we'll pull in weather reports. There is more, believe it. There are special purpose Linux distributions, and a distribution is just all the assortment of software you need to get something accomplished, put together by the people who manage that distribution. Ubuntu is a Linux distribution. Somebody mentioned Puppy Linux. That's a little Linux distribution. But you can get live CDs, DVDs, and thumb drives of special purpose distributions that are in fact bootable. And we'll go over some of those. System Rescue CD. If you got a system that's not bootable, or you need to do some work on it, you can boot on this CD and do a ton of work on it. All sorts of file system tools, network tools, partitioning tools. Very, very handy. Now, if you have a PC you have to throw away and you're really reluctant to give it away without wiping the disk somehow, DBAN is very, very effective. It's Derek's Boot and Nuke, and it's been around for a number of years and actively developed. You can pick all sorts of esoteric wiping algorithms, and the most complicated of one would probably take you a week to wipe a 100 gig drive. It's ridiculous. But the default takes about 20 minutes, and it overwrites the entire drive 3 times with random data. You can feel pretty secure about throwing that drive away once you're done with DBAN. I use that, recommend it. Of course, I never throw a drive away. I reuse them until they die. There is a standalone partition editor known as gparted, or gparted. Comes up in a GUI. Very feature-packed addition editor. Does all those things there. Very handy for resizing drives, repartitioning, setting UUIDs, and stuff like that. Just handy to have around and throw in. I keep a CD-ROM, a burned CD-ROM of each of these in a drawer out in my workshop. Don't use them often, but when you need them, they're invaluable. Well, let's talk about where we get the goodies. And you don't need to write these down, because I'll show you why. There's ClearOS, pfSense, MonoWall, and SmoothWall. Those are the standalone firewalls that I mentioned with the photo of my little IBM ThinkCenter. There are DDWRT and OpenWRT for wireless access points with very featureful software. And down at the bottom, I didn't have a slide on that, but you can get network-specific open source router software at myopenrouter.com. There's a version called Tomato there that's quite good. And you can run DDWRT and OpenWRT on Netgear too. Now that's all I do with mine. First thing I got a new Netgear, I was N300 or something, had it up on the air in an hour with replacement software. We talked about the utility CDs, the System Rescue CD, gparted, DBAN, which is Derek's Boot and Nuke, and there's a list for FreeNAS, which is the network attached storage, which is the box of disk drives that is available to every server or to every laptop and desktop in your house. CyanogenMod is where you get Android software, and they will show you how to root your Android phone, so you have root or administrative privileges, and download and install some of this replacement software. And I understand it's quite good at resuscitating older, crapped up Android phones, giving them a new lease on life. We talked about the 3 media center applications. There's XBMC, the original Xbox Media Center, Mythbuntu, which is Myth TV running on Ubuntu, and Geeksbox, which is another one which I have no experience for. Do we have any questions? I kind of ran through that kind of quickly. I should have maybe talked more slowly, or I don't have any other presentation for Huey, but I'm willing to take any questions. I run Linux on my desktops. Let's see, three desktops here in the office, one test desktop out in my workshop. I run one Linux desktop dedicated to ham radio. Have my wife's old Latitude M100. Oh, thank you for asking me. Here you go. Oh, there you go. There's the URL for downloading, and it's on my server, orbsplace.net/temp, and there's the file name. And if anybody would like to contact me.
Yeah, or they'll also be available on the APCUG site, on the same page that the schedule's on now.
Very good, thank you. If you have specific questions about some of these, I can direct you to more specific information. There's my email address there, orv.beach@gmail.com. Like I was saying, I run Linux on everything here, and it is not rocket science. Anybody who's the least bit interested in messing around with computers can come up to speed on this. I knew nothing about it when I started. I've been using it for a long time, but if you install Linux on a desktop or laptop, you can be immediately productive while you learn about, how to administering it. Administering it is different. It's not hard. They have GUI, file managers. There's GUI everything. The power of Linux is on the command line, but it's not mandatory that you use it. They have a full suite of utilities, GUI utilities. Like Huey said, this presentation is available at the APCUG website where the schedule is, or you can grab it off my server if you want. This is the PDF version. I assume yours is a PDF too, Huey?
It will be, yep. And we'll also have a video of the session if it comes out okay, and that will be available on the APCUG videos at YouTube. And that address, there'll be a link to that on the schedule as soon as it's ready and uploaded.
Okay. Any questions about? I ran through this kind of quickly, Huey. I'm sorry. But I'll answer any and all questions about open source software that anybody wants to address. It's rugged. I think my wife can recognize viruses when they come in because she sees them on the attachment. But viruses don't run on Linux, so we don't even run antivirus software. And
what's your opinion of the...
There is antivirus.
I'm sorry, go ahead and then I'll ask a question.
There is actually antivirus software for Linux. It's designed to run on Linux-based mail servers, and it scans incoming mail for Windows viruses. Go ahead.
What's your opinion of the OpenOffice, and I believe there's another similar Office suite that runs on Linux but also will run on PCs?
Yeah, that was the a little history there. We've got some time. The original name of that suite was Staroff. It was written by a German company and bought by Sun in about 1999. They open sourced what parts of it they could, but the problem was, even though they open sourced it, their chaperoning of that software as far as development goes was not very good. They weren't very responsive to people submitting patches and bug reports. So even though they renamed it OpenOffice, it didn't progress too slowly. There was a lot of dissatisfaction. Then about 2 years ago, Sun was purchased by Oracle, and the stewardship of the OpenOffice software went from bad to abysmal, because Oracle is not open source friendly. Well, what happened then was about 80% of the main contributors to OpenOffice got fed off. They split off, formed a group called the Document Foundation, TDF, asked for permission to rename it OpenOffice. Oracle said no, so they renamed it LibreOffice, or Liberated Office. They then took all of the outstanding patches and brought them forward and created LibreOffice, and since then they've gone forward and increasingly improved LibreOffice. Pretty much every Linux distribution has now dropped OpenOffice and is using LibreOffice, and if you're looking for an open source office suite, I highly recommend LibreOffice. My 12-year-old granddaughter used it to create a presentation for school on her Linux machine here, and then she transported it via thumb drive to her Linux machine at home. So she can do it, anybody can do it.
And that LibreOffice also has a Windows version, and I'm not sure whether they have one for Mac or not. Do you know?
I'm in the same boat as you. I do know they have a Windows version. I use it on my Windows 7 machine at work, which I share a disk drive with my Linux machine at work, which uses LibreOffice. And because the files are in open document format, which is an ISO standard, they're easily interchangeable.
Okay, I see there's a...
And by the way, a lot of the patches that LibreOffice rolled in that had been outstanding were patches to make importing of Microsoft documents more accurate. So it's by now substantially better at handling Microsoft documents than OpenOffice.
There's a couple of answers that yes, there is a Mac version, and then also there was a question, so LibreOffice is just a better version of OpenOffice.
The short answer would be yes. LibreOffice is rolling in more features. They've taken a lot of the legacy code that was still written in German from StarOffice out, so it's lighter weight, it's faster, more featureful, and just as importantly, they're taking input from the community. And they're doing periodic releases, maintenance releases, I think quarterly now. Instead of depending on a 1.0, 2.0, 3.0, and you have to wait forever for those, you can go grab a version that's no more than maybe 90 days old. And by the way, it will check for you and give you a little flag that says, hey, there's a new version available. Puts a little green globe up in the upper right-hand corner of your LibreOffice Calc or Writer or whatever. By the way, this presentation was done in LibreOffice Impress. I exported it to PowerPoint and sent it to Huey, and you didn't notice any issues with
Not a bit.
I hope, Huey. Good. So, highly recommended. Yeah, somebody made a comment that the iLink software is not available for Linux. That is correct. I went and checked. There is software for Linux called Wine, which stands for Wine is not an emulator. What it does is it's a shim between a Windows program and a Linux operating system, and it translates system calls both between the application and the operating system and back up to the operating system, from the operating system to the application. And it's been in steady development for over 10 years now. And by now, many, many, many Windows programs will run on top of Wine, on top of Linux. Typically, it's recommended you only do that if you can't find the Linux native equivalent of that program. I did see one thing where about a year ago somebody had tested iLink on top of Wine, on top of Linux, and got about 80% of it working. I suspect by now that percentage has gone up. I didn't feel like being daring or anything, so I'm running this presentation on my work Windows 7 laptop, which, by the way, has a virtual machine on it and runs Fedora Linux when I'm working at home and have to get to work. I have to work through a VPN. So Linux everywhere.
There's a question, what do you know about the Raspberry Pi?
I don't have one. I hope to get one sometime. The Raspberry Pi was developed a couple years ago and is kind of in the same genre as the Arduinos. They're small, lower-powered computing platforms, a printed circuit board, really. They put everything on there you need to run an operating system and have some user interface and some network interface. The Raspberry Pi is the latest. It will run Debian Linux, and I think there's a trimmed down version of Fedora will run it. And the nicest thing about it, it has, I see Sid says he has one. Sid, you might tell us what you're doing with it. They recently released a camera plugin for it, so I can see all sorts of dedicated applications for Raspberry Pis. I would like to do some sort of home automation here. I don't want to run a dedicated PC, so something like an Arduino or a Raspberry Pi would be good. And by the way, the top-end Raspberry Pi is $35, so you can't go wrong. And if you like electronics experimentation, like Sid pointed out, they have breadboard cards for them. This is something like the Raspberry Pi, like a development system like that, 5 years ago would have cost you, I don't know, $300 or $400. So it's a great bargain. The company that made it, interesting story, they made an additional run at 10,000, and they were hoping to get rid of those in a couple years. And they put them out at 2 websites in the UK, purchasing websites, and the day they became available, they crashed both websites and sold them out in about, I don't know, 4 hours. It's ridiculous. I think they've made more than $1 million now in the last year. And as Sid points out, it would be great for video because it's got hardware decoding for 1080p on board, so the CPU doesn't have to exert a lot of work to get video out. Ah, very good, Sid. He haunted the website and got his order in. It's not so hard to get now. If you search, just Google Raspberry Pi, if you're interested in playing in little widgets like that, it would. It's really inexpensive and a lot of fun. A couple of the guys in our local Linux users group are messing around with them, and I hear good things about them. Any other questions out there, Linux related?
Sid did say the XBMC runs on the Pi too.
That is correct. It's been ported, and I believe Myth TV is being ported also. Well, I got to get myself one of those. Oh, Stu said that. Excellent.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, it was.
Thanks for the input, guys. You're my chat room. Well, Huey, I don't need to hold you here much longer.
Thank you very much for a great presentation. A lot of great information as well. And again, that information will be available via our website with the PDF